Okay, hello and welcome. My name is Gillian Bloomfield and I work for the Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative at Yale University, or otherwise known as ELTI. I'm joined by my colleague, Zoraida Calle, ELTI's Colombia Program Coordinator. ELTI is an initiative of Yale University's School of the Environment, which receives generous support from Arcadia, a charitable fund of Lisbeth Rousing and Peter Baldwin. We're so pleased to welcome you here today to our 6th webinar in our 8-part webinar series, Forest and Landscape Restoration in Practice. And throughout the series, we've been celebrating the experiences and perspectives of alumni of ELTI's 15 years of capacity development and training.
Hello all. Today we are very pleased to be joined by two of our ELTI alumni. We have Cathy Watson from the Center for International Forestry Research and World Agroforestry Center in Kenya. And we also have Adriko Rogers from the Kyaninga Forest Foundation in Uganda. Cathy and Adriko are alumni of our 2021 online course, Tropical Forest Restoration and Agroforestry. In this course, participants from more than 20 countries explored different strategies that strengthen the resiliency of tropical landscapes. And throughout their reflections, both Cathy and Adriko helped us understand the challenges and opportunities for both ecological restoration and agroforestry in Africa. So we decided to invite these very enthusiastic leaders to share their perspectives on the urgent work that is being done in Uganda to enhance livelihoods and ecosystem services.
So some logistics for today. To avoid issues with connectivity and to provide access to subtitles, today's speakers have kindly pre-recorded their short presentations. So we'll hear the presentations and then have a chance for a discussion all together. So you know this session is being recorded and will be sent out via email in the next couple days. And we'll also post it to ELTI's YouTube channel, which I'm going to put here in the chat in just a second. So feel free to take a look at the chat where Zoraida and I will be posting relevant links throughout the session. And here you go with the link. So our first speaker, we'll start with Cathy Watson. Cathy is Chief of Partnerships for CIFOR and ICRAF. As Zoraida mentioned, she has worked for over 30 years in Africa as Chief of Program Development for World Agroforestry, and prior to that as the founder of 2 NGOs in Uganda. She is a prolific journalist writing about agroforestry, restoration, and other environmental themes with articles and blogs published for audiences around the world. And today, Cathy will share with us the experiences and findings from a recent project on agroforestry and restoration in a refugee hosting landscape in Uganda. And she'll also share some of the themes that came out of her experience in a recent ELTI online course that's been noteworthy for her work in Uganda. So while I get the video up, Cathy, you're welcome to activate your microphone if you'd like to say hello.
Yeah, hello everybody. I've been looking at the names coming up. I know some of you, very happy to see you here. I look forward to answering any questions that you have. It was a great course and it's a privilege to be here now. Yeah, this is, you can also see what's behind me on the picture. Yeah.
Thank you, Cathy, and thank you for being here today. So we'll get started.
I'm Cathy Watson, and I'm Chief of Partnerships at the Center for International Forestry Research and World Agroforestry, CIFOR-ICRAF. And I'm going to be talking to you about a project that I've been working on in northern Uganda. I recently took and completed an ELTI course, and I'm going to be applying some of the concepts and bringing up some of the ideas that we learned in that course here today. So the place where the project's occurring is in northwest Uganda. You can see it there with the red circles. There's South Sudan, there's Congo on to the west of it. And it's an area that's had many influxes of refugees, but we had a very big influx in 2016 of about 1 million refugees. Uganda's got the world's most progressive refugee policy, including access to land, the right to work, and many more very important things. And the practice is that with the negotiation of the local government, the local community makes land available to the refugees, who then need to raise quite a bit of their own food. So this was the situation, and you can already see the need for wood. This is the reception center where the food is being cooked for the refugees, and that's a refugee house made entirely of wood and thatch. So I'm going to apply some of the concepts of the course to what I saw. There's a lot of degradation in this area, and we were primarily concerned with the refugees, with reducing the impact on the landscape for their benefit, because we knew they were going to be there for quite a long time, but we didn't want, and we knew the ecosystem needed to be sustained to help them, and also for the refugee, the host community, the community that's hosting the refugees, who are Ugandan farmers. And there you can see one of the drivers of degradation in those two pictures, which is making bricks out of soil by burning wood. Another degradation factor is tobacco. That's the tobacco barn up there, the tallish building. That's the tobacco. And of course, charcoal, which is traditionally produced, but now flooding to the cities. It's produced in a highly inefficient way, traditional method, which is very inefficient in converting trees into charcoal, and then it's sold. But it's an important source of income for both the refugees and the farmers, but it's also undermining the sustainability of their lives. So the new arrivals are distributed across what was once community land. That was a source of thatch and poles, fuel, animal protein, fiber, fruits, and then ecosystem services like stabilizing river flow. And in fact, in the entire district, the rivers are flowing too fast and very turbid because of loss of tree cover. But suddenly, this area needed to provide all the energy and almost all the building materials for 170,000 people. And a lot of land needed to be cleared to farm. So just quickly up here, you can see wooded grassland with the refugee tarpaulins, which is what they're given. They make kind of lean-tos, and that's where they're living. And some of those trees will be things like shea butter trees, very important and useful trees. They're young ladies collecting wood at the bottom, and at the top thatch. And this is in the wet season, you can see it's really a wooded savanna. And this gentleman is standing next to two rather interesting fruit-bearing indigenous trees. So degradation can be surprisingly rapid, and you can get to this kind of bare homestead, sort of refugee homestead look, where there's a lot of erosion and water flowing away next to the houses. So what did we do, and how did we decide what to do? The landscape is an agricultural landscape, or if they were settled in savanna, it was going to have to become an agricultural landscape. So we opted for agroforestry to produce biomass, and also to support what there is and to restore it, and maybe even increase it in some places, and reduce the impact of its loss. Very fortunately for us, as in a lot of the world, agroforestry is a traditional practice for both the refugees and the hosts. And what you see here is indigenous trees with sesame growing under them. And those trees have been intentionally left in the field by the farmers because they know it makes the soil better. They know it regulates the water, and so on and so forth. So that's true agroforestry, but traditional. And we're excited about agroforestry because it offers hope for soil fertility. It regulates water, the roots and the trunks and the leaves regulate water, help it go into the ground. You get fuel and construction material, you get fruit and nutrition. Nutrition can include leaves, which are an important dry season vegetable, and there's lots of non-timber forest products. And it also supports conservation and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. So what did we actually do? We did quite a bit of research, and then we did some implementation. So the research, we asked refugees and hosts about their aspirations for trees and which trees they wanted and how many and where. So the refugees wanted up to 55 trees on each of their small plots. That was what they thought of. And they thought that it would be nice to grow them on the boundaries, but also inside the plots. Whereas the smallholders, who have about 3 hectares, the national farmers, wanted many more trees, up to 1,000, and they mostly wanted to do woodlots. And that we got a whole list of indigenous and exotic trees they were interested in, and the reasons were construction, firewood, shade, edibles, windbreak, income, medicine, rainfall, charcoal. And then we did a proper forest inventory and biomass survey, and we found 81 species. So that would be the reference ecosystem. That would be something we could, think about trying to maintain or getting back to elements of it. And we also found up to 67 stumps per hectare, which shows that there was a lot of tree cutting going on, but also that we could get a lot of trees back by assisting the natural regeneration. And then what we did in terms of actions is that we set up a very, very beautiful big nursery. We hired South Sudanese refugees and young Ugandan foresters, and we started an outreach program, and we supplied a lot of seedlings for the refugee households and the farming households. And there's a lot of visible evidence of impact, positive impact, and we're very proud of this. So just quickly going through this tall tree here is an albizia. We have 2 species of it up there. It's an indigenous tree, grows very, very fast. Those trees are no more than 3 years old, if not 2 years old. Then we have papaya. We have moringa, which for those of you in Latin America who might not know it, it has edible leaves, among other things. People are already, we've only been there since 2018, they're already making furniture from grown trees, from the seedlings we gave them. A lot of our trees have been planted for shade. Shade's a huge issue for refugees. Everybody wants to be able to sit outside in the daytime under a tree. That particular refugee family got 600 trees and made a woodlot. There's a lot of living fences, and that's one particular indigenous tree called the marcamia, which is integrated into the fence. Then there's this semi-perennial shrub called a pigeon pea, which is end-fixing, provides fuel, fodder, food, and does all the right things for soil and water. Very, very easy. You directly seed it. You don't need to raise seedlings. They're getting timber. And this refugee here has got a terrific compound. She's an outlier. Not all of them did so well or adopted all what we were providing, but she's got multiple understory plants, which are the annuals, and she's got multiple species of trees, and you can see how green it is. So some lessons learned and advice to others, and how this relates to what I learned on the ELTI course. Definitely, refugees are not permanent on the landscape, and so there's been a long-standing belief that they won't plant trees. We really showed that they will, but they don't have certainty of tenure. But they're long enough there, on average, 25 years, that kind of thing. They don't just come and go home. So they really need those trees, and they know it. We really enjoy the social capital our nurseries created, people coming all the time. We were very focused on raising the native species because they're not being raised by anybody else. And we need the biological authenticity to recover ecosystem structure, which was one of the concepts that we heard on the course. We also heard on the course that agroforestry is not always agroecological. And that's certainly true, because we have fast growing exotics, some of which are borderline invasive. We just debate that a lot, that are in great demand. But we know we have to be pragmatic and also give the refugees what they want and what they need. So we are growing some of those species, trying to avoid the exotic ones. And so what's next, really? We need to go to scale through partnerships with big NGOs and the UN, and we're trying to do that. We've had trainings with, we've been training their staff, and we're drawing up, partnership agreements. We need to have a much clearer differentiation between what's the agroforestry model for hosts and refugees. We need to do a lot more on our tree seed collection system. And, at the moment, sometimes we're collecting only seed from one tree to propagate, but we now know that we really need from, dozens of mother trees to get the genetic diversity. We want to increase diversity of species, include medicinal trees. For example, we need to communicate more. We've done 2 radio programs, but that's it. And we need to plant in patches to form vegetation islands and stepping stones in the landscape. And we think we can do this in places like schools, where they're less likely to be under human pressure. And we believe we need to be more intentional about meeting human needs, income, medicine, and nutrition. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed presenting to you today.
Thank you so much, Cathy. It's so wonderful to see the results you all have achieved so far, and especially noteworthy how you mentioned that it counteracts some of these long-standing assumptions about refugees, and shows that actually they do and can grow trees, and that these agroforestry systems and woodlots can provide useful benefits for them and counteract all the degradation processes you mentioned.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks everybody for listening. That is, of course, the first time I've seen myself presenting that. I hope it got the concepts across. Just one thing I could quickly say is that because a lot of the trees are so useful and they want to sell them for poles, sometimes I go visit and I think, oh, there's not enough trees cover here. We gave them a lot of seedlings, but actually there's a lot of tree use as well. So we need to mix the permanent trees with the trees that are going to be cut quite quickly and used for cooking or for sale for poles.
Thanks, Cathy. Refugee camps have long been considered a lost cause for conservation, and they are a sad reality that brings together human suffering and environmental degradation. So your presentation offers a fresh perspective and helps us understand that restoration can really play a very important role in humanitarian crisis. When we were recording your talk, you mentioned that on average, refugees will stay at a given place for 25 years. So of course, they will plant trees, but we must provide the right species, those that are able to satisfy their needs. So thank you very much.
Thanks, yeah. And what we're trying to do is actually shift humanitarian practice a little bit and get people to start thinking about trees as an energy as soon as the influx starts happening, because that's what people are going to rely upon.
Okay, thank you, Cathy. So now we're here from Adriko Rogers, who is currently working as a field relations officer for Kyaninga Forest Foundation in Western Uganda. Adriko grew up in Hoima Oil City in Midwestern Uganda, and he has a degree in agroforestry from Niabeya Forestry College. He joined the technical team of Kyaninga Forest Foundation in 2019, and he works with cocoa farmers in Bundibuyo district and with communities that make eco charcoal from Lantana Camara in Kamwenyi district, all of this in Western Uganda. As you will see in Adriko's presentation, he enjoys collecting tropical forest seeds and seedlings for restoration. He also enjoys forest monitoring and training school children, the youth, and their families on environmental conservation and restoration. Adriko speaks a variety of Nilotic and Bantu languages from Northern and Western Africa. I want to mention a few of these: Lugbara, Madi, Runyoro, Rutoro, Ruganda, Runyankoli, Rukiga, and Kiswahili. And he also speaks English. So while we get Adriko's video set up, you are welcome to say hello, to say a few words to our participants.
Hello, everyone. As said by Zoraida, I'm Adriko Rogers from Western Uganda. I work with Kyaninga Forest Foundation, and I welcome you to this webinar. It has been so great to learn a lot from Yale. It has been really a lot that I've learned from you, Zoraida, Gillian, and the whole team. So I can't wait to put this on ground and to add on what we do. But briefly, we also do restoration and agroforestry with the surrounding communities in Western Uganda, Fort Potro City.
Thank you, Adriko.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adriko Rogers. I work with Kyaninga Forest Foundation as a field relations officer. Kyaninga Forest Foundation is an NGO based in Fort Potro, Western Uganda, and we deal with conservation. Who we are. Kyaninga Forest Foundation was formed in 2010 And in 2017, it got funding from BOSS Plus. BOSS Plus is a Belgian NGO which funds and deals with conservation. Our project was mainly a 5-year pilot project, and it began in 2017, and it was meant to end in 2021. Here below is a map of Uganda showing the photography of Uganda in meters above sea level. You can see that most of the areas in Uganda are from 1,000 meters above sea level to 3,000 meters above sea level. Our project mainly involves 2 objectives, and the first objective is participatory forest management. This is where we conserve the forest which is surrounding the lake. Then objective 2 is sustainable and smart climate. This is where we do agroforestry by distributing trees to the surrounding communities. Here is the map of Kyaninga Lake, and this is the forest which surrounds the lake. This forest is under pressure since it provides firewood to over 10 villages which are surrounding this village. You can see in a map that the rest of the places are really, all the trees have been cut and the only green is remaining surrounding this forest. So everyone who sits and stays near this community comes in here for firewood and other forest products. Here mainly people come for firewood. They also come for herbal medicine from this forest since it has only indigenous trees. Proceed. Under our objective 1 of participatory forest management, we have a huge nursery of over 50,000 trees, all indigenous. Here we bring in the community, as you can see in the photo. People, surrounding communities came in to visit and see and learn how we germinate trees and learn about the various species we have in our nursery. And we also involve them in transect walks. We take them through our forest, Kyaninga forest. They learn the illegal activities, they learn the dangers of the dangers they would face in case they cut this forest to extinction. We also involve them in enrichment planting, whereby they do it at their own will. This makes them feel that the forest belongs to them, and here they take part in managing the forest. They will always stay alert in case there is any lumbering or any cutting of wet trees or young trees. These people come in themselves even before we take part, because by involving them in participatory forest management, this makes them feel that the forest belongs to them. We also make them feel that if they use this forest sustainably, it will survive and their grandchildren will always find it alive. So as we proceed, under our objective 2 of sustainable and climate smart land use, this is where mainly we focus on agroforestry. On agroforestry, we involve the community in bringing them also to learn about trees in our nursery. We go ahead and distribute tree seedlings during the dry season, during the wet season, to the community surrounding. As you can see here in this photo, one of our field officers was trying to distribute trees to the community, and this was just in a nearby village. You can see the trees are carried in a tricycle. We use a tricycle because it reaches everywhere. It's not affected by poor roads in Uganda. Most of the feeder roads are really bad. So we use a 3-wheeled motorcycle to distribute these trees. So this takes the trees from home to home, from door to door, and we train the farmers on how to plant and manage these trees. We also go ahead to follow up and monitor how these farmers have planted these trees by making them, by making regular home visits to see how the trees are growing and to see how the farmers are managing trees. You can see here, I was taking part in monitoring, and the farmer was happy to welcome me in his home. Yeah, we also go ahead and work with schools. You can see on my left, we had brought pupils from Kamengo Primary School to take part in nursery activities. They began by reading about, by seeing and telling them about the various tree seedlings we have in the nursery. We also take those students and pupils for forest walks. We make transect walks and take them there where they help in identifying the illegal activities, for example, lumbering, for example, collection of herbal medicine from that tree, whereby the community peels the bark of the trees, and in turn, these trees dry up. So we hope these children to grow up knowing the dangers of these illegal activities in Kyaninga forest. We also go ahead and establish tree nurseries in these schools, where these children take part in learning how to pot, learning how to manage a tree from a seed to a mature tree. We also take part in making environmental clubs. These environmental clubs teach them a lot of things on environmental conservation. We teach them on how to manage trees. We also teach them on how to take care of all the trees. We also go ahead and train the local communities, mainly the youth, on alternative sources of energy. Instead of cutting down trees, we have embarked on training the local communities and the surrounding communities on making eco-charcoal. Eco-charcoal is a form of charcoal briquettes which are made from remains of tree leaves. Now we also identified an invasive species called lantana, which we use in making this eco-charcoal. Eco-charcoal is environmentally friendly. This helps in helping the women. You know, in Uganda, most women use the 3-stone stoves, cook, and they are mainly affected by the smoke. It affects their eyes and their breathing system. So eco-charcoal burns smart, as you can see in the next photo. It burns smart, and this is how it burns. It doesn't have smoke, and we hope that this helps in controlling respiratory diseases for the women. You can see one of the farmers after the training, she was very happy and excited to have produced these are called small piston shaped eco-charcoal. And this is called the honeycomb eco-charcoal. This burns for 6 to 7 hours. And now we have embarked on making this from Lantana camara. We cut the Lantana camara from the forest, since it is invasive. We cut it from the forest, fell it to the training area using a tractor, where we train the farmers from. So from here, we cut it into pieces, put it in this drum. This is called a carbonizing drum. Here we burn it to make char. You can see here a group of farmers were harvesting char. So we burn it to make char. From there, we transfer the char to the crusher, which breaks it into small pieces. From there, we take it to a mixer where we add red soil and cassava flour porridge. This works as starch to combine the particles of char together, produce the various shapes of the eco-charcoal. You can see, as I told you before, this is the piston shape and this is the honeycomb. So this charcoal will always be environmentally friendly because we make it using invasive species only. So when you train the community on this, communities go away from cutting down trees and they embark on making eco-charcoal, which in turn also earns them a living. We have also learned this through our 5-year pilot project. We have mainly involved the youth and their families in environmental conservation. The youth take most part in the activities in environmental conservation since they are the future generation. We believe that when you train the youth on the dangers of cutting down trees and the dangers of destroying wetlands, this makes them aware, and the future generation will always keep safe because these youth have a lot of energy and they are the main people who take part in cutting down trees. So we have embarked on training them since they also go back home and train their families, their parents on the dangers of deforestation and environmental degradation. We also go ahead and train schools on environmental conservation. This is done through school environmental clubs, which are formulated to train and teach the pupils on the dangers of environmental degradation. We also go ahead and do regular monitoring. Regular monitoring makes farmers know the importance of trees. When the field officer keeps on coming to a farmer's home after giving him trees, the farmer feels that he has a debt of looking after these trees. And the more you keep there coming to visit him, the more he becomes friendly to you, and the more he knows that these trees are important. So you'll find in a meanwhile, as you're coming monthly or after 2 months to see this farmer feels like whenever you're going to come, the trees should be looked after and they should be catered for. So in turn, you find that the tree survives and it grows. And when 1, 2, 3 trees grow, after the farmers looked after them, it means we are conserving the environment. So regular visits make the farmers really very active in environmental conservation and looking after the trees. We have also learned that making site analysis before distributing trees to these farmers is so important, because site analysis makes you know where the trees are supposed to be planted and which species should be planted. We have also learned that Lantana Camara makes good eco charcoal, and it makes it burn for longer hours more than using only tree leaves. Indigenous trees are very important in cocoa yields. We have also learned that planting indigenous trees, since they provide shade to these cocoa, improve so much on the output, on the yields of the cocoa. So as I'm concluding, what is next in our next project? We expect to expand to more areas since we have had a large demand of more indigenous trees from people who stay outside our areas of intervention. We expect to grow bigger, expand, and distribute more indigenous trees to these people. Our advice to other NGOs who are doing the same activity like we are doing, we really encourage them to do intensive monitoring to make sure that the activity doesn't only stop on distribution of trees, but it goes ahead to make a follow-up on how these trees survive. This can only be done through intensive monitoring and continuous training of the youth to get involved them in these activities of conservation, since the youth are the future generations. Thanks for listening.
Thank you again, Adriko, and congratulations to you and to the whole team in Kyaninga Forest Foundation for this great work. I was very impressed by the beauty and also the simplicity of your organization's approach of having the small nurseries in the schools and teaching the students to care for the seedlings and to plant the trees in the small family plots. I think about many organizations throughout the world that are trying to plant millions of trees, but without thinking very much about the relationship between people and those trees. So you and your organization are aware that it will not be enough to restore the forest. So I think you're doing the right thing. You are working to restore the people's relationship to the forest. And that, I think, is a very powerful idea. So thank you very much.
Most welcome, Zoraida. To add on, we'll also go ahead and do regular monitorings. These make relationships between the organization and makes the farmers look more care of the trees. So it's not only that you raise up the seedlings and then, because really we know that indigenous trees take a little bit longer to grow through from the nursery. So it looks bad, like when you just take the tree seedlings, just drop them to the farmers and then walk away. Make sure that you make a follow-up on these trees, because they're really so expensive and they take time to manage. So they really need close monitoring to make sure that these farmers get used, these farmers know the importance of trees, and yeah, in future, then the trees we shall have conserved the environment. Otherwise, if we just take the trees, we drop them there for the farmers, it will really look bad, and these farmers won't really know the importance of trees. So we encourage the whole world to really take part in monitoring. It's not only distribution, but let's make more efforts on monitoring so that we have lots of survival rates in this world of the trees.
Yeah, it's so important, like you're saying, I think for the broad audience of people here, just to shift the mindset of thinking about monitoring is not just data collection or project management, but that monitoring can go far beyond that into, like you shared, empowering people, building a sense of pride in the trees, and having their farm visited by different guests over the years. So I think we have about 15 minutes to or 20 minutes to call on both members of our panel to now get ready, and then we'll open up discussion to the questions from Zoraida and myself, and from our panel, from our webinar participants. So go ahead, Zoraida, would you like to ask the first question?
Yes, I tried to put several questions together here. We know that involvement of women and youth is a very important component of your work and work in Africa in general. So can you both share some insights with us about strategies to enhance the participation of women and youth in restoration and agroforestry? So Cathy, why don't you start?
Yeah, I can go first. In fact, 80% of the refugee adults are women, because a lot of the men have stayed behind in South Sudan for various reasons. So there are a lot of women-led households, and they're very attracted by trees that provide nutrition. They'll eat, that is the first thing they want to plant. And then they want to walk less far for firewood. So if we can get anything that they can harvest on their land just by pruning branches, that's a really good thing. And then of our 5 community-based facilitators from South Sudan, 2 are women, and they do a great job. And people are very reliant on trees and the natural surrounding for food. And there's about 30 different fruit trees and food species in the bush. So they know them, they have names for them, and they're often out collecting them. So they've got a big reason not to see the bush cleared or the forest cleared, the woodland cleared.
Okay, Adriko, would you like to answer the question about?
Yeah. So in Uganda, it's the men who take decisions on whether to plant trees or whether not to plant trees. But then they don't take part in management. So it's the women who take part in firewood collection, in going to the forest for firewood, in collecting each and every other forest aspect. So mainly when we visit these farmers' homes, we meet women, because men are always breadwinners. They wake up in the morning, go to towns to look for money and to look for food. So when you visit these farmers' homes, definitely you always find there the women and the children. And this gives you a golden opportunity to interact with the women, to interact with the youth, and train them, teach them on the roles of trees. When you go for forest monitoring, you always find it's hard to find the man. It's always the youth, the children, and the women, because they are the people who really take part in looking for firewood, looking for other forest products. So it gives us a great opportunity to train these people on the dangers of deforestation, on the dangers of environmental degradation. And yeah, it makes them learn. And also to add on, the youth, when you train them from schools, some parents really don't take long to understand the dangers of deforestation. But when a kid comes from school and comes and explains to a dad or a mom, Daddy, they trained us on the dangers of deforestation, and this could be the outcomes after we cut down the trees. The parents tends to take the concept from his or her child more faster than from any other staff of an organization. So this makes them acquire the skills. So from there, you find either the kid will make the contact between the father and the field officer. So you find the family gets interested in conservation, and in this way, they learn how to plant trees and they get interested in planting more and more trees.
That's so interesting. We really have to learn about that.
There were a bunch of questions about the tree species selection, and you both talked about prioritizing native or indigenous tree species, and Adriko, your group has this impressive nursery of over 100 species. Could you describe a little bit more about that process of getting the native tree species and growing them, but also how do you balance out the promotion of those trees with, like Adriko mentioned, or Cathy mentioned, the demand for fast-growing exotics as well.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, shall I just go quickly, Rogers, and then you've got more indigenous trees. We have about 26 species in the nursery, and about 17 of them are indigenous, but indigenous trees can be more slow growing. We have some trees that are like ecological trees that we just want to keep on the landscape, like the one you can see behind me, which has sausages, what they look like sausages. That's a famous, the African sausage tree. And that's medicinal, right? But it's hard, it's dense, it's also good for charcoal. So there's a tension between people just wanting fast trees, like teak. We actually don't do teak, but we do some other ones that are fast. Luckily, there's a one indigenous tree called Markamia, and there's a question about Markamia, which both coppices, you know, when you cut it, it makes more poles and grows quite fast. So we're trying to promote that one. Otherwise, you get caught up in the species like neem, which, you know, have slightly invasive properties, especially if the climate changes the environment and it becomes like cooler or hotter or more rainy or less rainy. So we really have to, but we have to work harder to get the indigenous trees out on farms and refugee plots.
Okay, for the case of Kyaninga Forest Foundation, we are finding it very hard to source for the seeds of these indigenous trees in the start of the project. But now we have learned some new technique of knowing how to collect seedlings from this forest. We collect seedlings from the surrounding forests. Some of the forests are protected by National Forest Authority, which is the body which is governing forest resources in Uganda, and we also collect seedlings from Uganda Wildlife Authority. These are national parks which are protected by Uganda Wildlife Authority. We also go ahead, whenever we find a tree which is in flowers or which is in fruits, we make sure that we drop a Google pin for this tree. In that, this Google pin will always indicate whether the state which the tree is in. If the tree is in flowering, we just indicate that this tree species at this and this time, it was in flowers. So we shall be knowing that after 2 months or 3 months, we shall be knowing that this tree will be in fruits. So we have come up with that calendar, which really tells us which tree is flowering and at what time. So this makes collection of various tree seedlings and tree seeds very easy for us. Then we also go ahead and we have a lot of memorandums of understandings with the National Forest Authority and Uganda Wildlife Authority, which gives us the permission to access these forests and collect wildlings and seeds for the various tree species. But mainly is we need to develop a calendar which will always tell you that trees are flowering at whatever time. This makes you to collect a lot of seeds and seedlings in just a small time.
Thank you, Adriko. And by the way, this work on the phenology of native trees is great for participatory research involving youth and children. So you might be working with them to collect this information in a very systematic way. There's also a large number of questions related to the eco-charcoal. So people want to know, for example, how do you use more about using lantana for charcoal, and how long does it take to make a briquette, and how long does it last when you burn it?
Okay, so earlier on we used to make eco charcoal from remains of trees, tree leaves, and tree branches, small branches. But now we found out that lantana camara, which is an invasive species, and other invasive species in the forest make good eco charcoal. So eco charcoal made from lantana camara burns for a longer time, burns for around 6 to 7 hours. This is the honeycomb shaped, and yeah, it burns smart without smoke. And for the training purposes, we normally take about 5 days to train farmers on how to make the lantern, the eco charcoal. But if it is now on a commercial basis or a business basis, it's much easier than that, because for the 5 days, the first day is always taken in collecting the dry lantana from the forest, fell it to the training area. The second day is used for carbonizing, burning the lantana to make char. The black substance which is carbonized out of lantana is called char. And that's what I used to call char. The third day is used for making the dryer, and then the fourth day is used for producing the various species, the various shapes of the eco charcoal. These charcoal burns in different ways. The small piston-shaped pieces burn a little bit shorter for about 2 to 3 hours, and the bigger one, which is the honeycomb shape, burns for 6 to 7 hours. Earlier on, the eco charcoal used to make without lantana camara used to burn for about 5 to 6 hours. So by identifying lantana, this made it burn a bit longer for 6 to 7 hours.
Thank you, Adriko.
And there are a lot of questions about the eco charcoal. I saw Adriko put your contact information in the PowerPoint slide. I'll put that in the chat so people can follow up specifically about that or write to Kyaninga Forest Foundation as well.
Good. I just wanted to say something about invasive species. Lantana camara is from Central America, and we have a terrible problem with it just in Nairobi here. And it's allelopathic, and it secretes a chemical into the soil, so nothing will grow up through it. It completely stops succession in its tracks, and it becomes so thick that in India, where it's called the curse of India, even tigers can't push through it. So it's brilliant that Adriko is doing this. And luckily, we don't have very many invasive species in the area I'm working. It's a little bit more pristine. It hasn't been, but there have been problems with like the UN and various NGOs wanting to promote things like prickly pear, which is very, very, very invasive and a big, big problem for rangelands in Africa. So I think the thing is to prevent, to really not introduce invasive species when you're doing work with like refugees or anything. Every species you promote needs to be checked. And does it have, and we're under pressure to promote guava, because people love it, they can make income out of it, but it's actually also invasive. It's distributed by bats, the very fine seeds, and also by parrots, even in Uganda. So thank you, Adriko, for doing that with the lantana.
Thanks, Cathy, for that comment. And I would also like to say that the approach that Adriko and his institution is taking to control an invasive species is probably the most clever way of dealing with an invasive plant. Turn it into a resource, do something with it, cook with it, whatever, but don't let it grow wild. Let it become a very useful resource for the community.
Yeah, to add on, Zoraida, this lantana camara should always be harvested when it's in the dormant stage. The dormant stage is where it's not flowering and it's not in fruits. Because when you do it when it's in flowers and it's in fruits, it's like you're dispersing it more. So you need to do the cutting down and the harvesting when it's in the dormant stage, when it's only having leaves without flowers and seeds.
Okay.
Do we have time?
Okay.
For one more question, I think, and there's a really nice question from Bondi Peñaflor and Arget in the Q&A. Bondi says to both speakers, could you identify one major problem that you encountered during project implementation? And what was an action undertaken to address such a problem? So you might need to think about it for a second. But one major problem you encountered during project implementation and then an action to address such a problem.
I'll just say something, and that it's, and Jim Hallett, one of the people who's watching from Washington State, asked, was it difficult to set up the nursery? It was so not difficult to set up the nursery, right? And people were so happy to take trees. Our problem is choice of trees. And there are a lot of NGOs also promoting exotics. And there is just such a strong bias to exotics in restoration projects in Africa. And there's such a bias against indigenous species. I don't know how we're going to overcome it. I would like to do lots of radio programs. They're just not valued, and people think that they're valued, but not for planting. They're not plantable trees, and people think they just grow wild. So when you suggest it in our area, people will say, but that's a wild tree, right? So they're even surprised you want them to plant it. That's been our struggle.
So interesting.
Okay, for the case of Kyaninga, we really faced a lot of competition from the exotics, mainly eucalyptus in the start of the program. But now, as that indigenous trees have a lot of products they provide to the community, mainly the herbal medicine. Aspect of a species called Trema orientalis, which is more agroforestry, made the farmers really love indigenous trees, because if you can grow, in Western Uganda, mainly our crop is banana. So if you can grow a tree in a banana plantation and it grows within 1 to 2 years, and a farmer can harvest firewood from this tree, and it supports agroforestry, it doesn't affect either the bananas or any other ecosystem. This made them slowly turn away from the eucalyptus, and now so much for the indigenous.
Okay, thank you, Adriko.
So we have, like I mentioned in the chat, there are so many questions we didn't get to. So we encourage you all to reach out to the speakers for more information about all these different elements. Like people are asking about lantana and eco charcoal and working with refugees, and so many great ideas that we're so grateful for Adriko and Cathy to present today and inspire all these thoughts going around and ideas for learning more amongst our participants. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've largely run out of time for the questions. In our last few minutes, we want to be able to share some upcoming learning opportunities. So we'll do that, and then we'll formally close the session. First, let me share my screen here. Well, first we want to extend a really huge thank you to Cathy and Adriko for your wonderful presentations, and to everyone logging in from around the world joining us today from so many different countries. And as I mentioned, we want to share some upcoming learning opportunities for you all in the next few months. So firstly, you can learn more about ELTI's work at our website, elti.yale.edu. And we have some upcoming events that you can access from our events page if you go to the homepage and then click on events.
And for those of you who speak Spanish, we have 2 interesting opportunities. We have a webinar next week called Engaging Youth in Restoration and Agroecology. This is free and open to the public, and we will feature 2 alumni from Chile and Colombia. And we still have some spaces open for our next Spanish language course, which is an introduction to silvopastoral systems. You can enroll today at the link that Gillian just put in the chat.
I'll add both events. I added the webinar linked in the chat, and I'm adding the silvopastoral link in the chat, and we welcome you to sign up for any of those if you speak Spanish or if you have colleagues who do. And then we wanted to let you know that we just launched our call for applicants for ELTI's 1-year online certificate program, Tropical Forest Landscapes, Conservation, Restoration, and Sustainable Use. This program is a co-sponsor of this webinar series, and many of the different moderators you've seen are ELTI team members who are also play an active role in the delivery of this program. This online certificate program is a 1-year high-touch online program on managing tropical forest landscapes. And we go through a series of 4 8-week courses on the fundamental concepts, human dimensions, land use strategies, and funding and fundraising aspects of tropical forest management, as well as a capstone project course where everyone relates what they're learning to a landscape of personal or professional interest. And then once it's safe to do so, the program will include an optional field course. Who is this program for? Staff members from a variety of different sectors, from government, NGOs, private sector, academia, graduate students and recent graduates, landholders, farmers, community organizers, really anyone interested in designing, implementing, and monitoring conservation and restoration initiatives. So to learn more about it, we welcome you to go to the website tropicalrestorationcertificate.yale.edu. I'll put that information in the chat. And also you can email us at tropicalcertificate@yale.edu. And the application priority deadline is March 4th. So we encourage you to keep that in mind and let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, so finally, we want to thank again Cathy and Adriko for their wonderful presentations, and we would like to encourage you to sign up for ELTI's events and also our mailing list. And you can find the sign up box at the bottom of each web page. You can also check our videos on ELTI's YouTube channel, where we will also be posting the recording of today's webinar. And thank you again to all those joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. So please take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adriko and Cathy and
Thank you,
Zoraida.
Cathy. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Zoraida.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.